እኔስ መክበሪያዬ ሰጥልሻለሁ ነፍሴና ስጋዬ
ኢትዮጵያ ሀገሬ የታጠርሽው ባጋም ከንደን ሳልንተራስ ለጣንጭና ወጋም ከደፈርሽ ወዲያ እሳቱ በቁጣ ሲግል እያለም ቢንጃ ዱርሜ ደበቁ ያስሆን ምድጃ ቋርጦ
Throughout history, the role of women in times of war has often been overlooked. Women have always played an integral role in the battle. They served as spies, couriers, and nurses, providing food and clothing to soldiers and refugees. They also offered a crucial support to soldiers on the battlefield. The Battle of Adwa, which took place in 1896, saw heroines who won half of the battle. These unnamed heroines, who marched alongside men to the battlefield, were put to test during the 800 kilometers march from the capital to Adwa. They were assigned many responsibilities that were critical to the campaign's continual success, including logistics, which is challenging even by today's standard. They carried and transported pots for making the popular traditional drink aj and alla, as well as for cooking the Ethiopian delicacy wet, baking pans for making injera, mills for grinding flour, jar of honey, horns for drinks, and other materials that could not be loaded on animals for safety reasons.
During the Battle of Adwa, the role of women is something which is beyond other battles and other campaigns. Why do we say that? Because the first thing is that a large number of women were part of the campaign. When the army started, the main army of Menelik started to march to Adwa from Addis Ababa, so several women were recruited to do what? To prepare food. So under normal days, what happens is that the army will be quartered into households. So when Menelik moves from Addis Ababa, and then if he is going to stay a day at Debra Burhan or to pass a night at Debra Burhan, usually what they do is that soldiers will be quartered to households around. So 2 soldiers, 10 soldiers per household. That did not happen during the campaign to Adwa. There was no quartering of the army for supplies because the peasantry did not have any supplies because of the famine. So food has to be, grain has to be loaded, it has to be grinded, and then it has to be cooked. For this, a large number of women must participate. That's why almost more than 36,000 women were part of the campaign. So their principal purpose is to cook for the army. So every regional lord also did that. They recruited a large number of women.
The palace attendants were divided into service groups led by captains, which included Ajbeit, also known as Meat House, Injera Beit, Alla Beit, Gambonya, and other groups. These chores were carried out so smoothly that some historians and chroniclers could not help but appreciate these women for their efficiencies. They noted that the food was plentiful, that a huge feast was held every day with egg and honey, and that the meal was never insufficient.
Supply of food part, they're cooking for the fighters, they're feeding the fighters, they're fetching water from the rivers and the pools for the army to drink. And not only that, they were nursing the wounded warriors. Were brought to them. I was women who took the role of nursing. So they are nursing them, feeding them, and having them drink also.
In order to prevent their elderly loved ones, children, and cattle from ending up in a battle zone, these women also established their own group to lead these people to safety. It's reasonable to believe that even the most seasoned fighter can't remain motivated throughout a lengthy and exhausting march. Thanks to the women, there was ample support. In addition to wives supporting their husbands, and other relatives supporting each other. There were women specifically tasked with this job of stirring up the fighting spirit of the men. Most are, of course, folk musicians, but the main event of this long march and later the decisive battle were singing, laughing, and frolicking.
There were women who were encouraging, inspiring the soldiers to fight. So these are the Azmari. So the Azmari, they sing war songs, and then they strengthen the morals of the army. So not only in Adwa, in other battles this is usual in Ethiopia. So there is the Azmari, and then women mostly they incite them, and then that's another contribution.
Inciting and creating the sense of bravado in the men, instilling courage in them, and persuading them to go and fight for their freedom. You remember this proverb, "Sete lakachu motai farab." And therefore, when these women gathered together and then encouraged the men, persuaded them to go and fight, they would definitely go and fight, being fearless of death. So the role of women in propaganda and inciting the warriors to fight bravely was tremendous.
Asmari's Adikwa is a well-known folk performer with her quick-wit lyrics capable of entertaining when needed and, more importantly, inspiring patriotic feelings even among the most inexperienced soldiers. However, women's duty was not confined to these. Others were charged with grueling physical tasks such as cleaning road ahead of the approaching army, digging trenches, and even building fortress. They were also in charge of tending for the injured warrior and supplying water.
In terms of taking care of the wound, women played an important role. Even though Adwa is a victory, the loss on the Ethiopian side was large. I said more than almost 11,000 people died. So that's why you see several were wounded, and taking care of the wounded was one of the principal tasks that was left to women.
Meanwhile, other women redistributed the rifles and bullets of the wounded, as well as those of the fallen soldiers and prisoners of war. They were also in charge of arranging for the burial of their fallen soldiers. While mentioning the heroine of Adwa, it doesn't go without mentioning Empress Taitu as the driving force behind Adwa's victory. She was a force to be reckoned with, functioning as a motivator, strategist, and leader with her own rights.
Taitu is an important person and political personage. She is the empress. And then in terms of her noble background, genealogy, she is far larger than Menelik, because she has relatives from different regions of the country, like Gondar, Gojja, and then also Wallu, Simi. So her blood relationship with the nobility of these areas means that she has a large political acceptance. So that's how she was mobilizing also the supplies for the army.
Taitu had a profound understanding of politics, which she exploited to her own advantage while dealing with powerful regional leaders. She was essential in unifying Ethiopia's numerous ethnic groups and preparing them for combat.
Taitu is quite a unique historical figure for three things. One, her diplomatic skill. She has a very good diplomatic knowledge, and then in all of the negotiations with Italy prior to the campaign to Adwa, she was the most decisive person, more than Menelik. Apart from his diplomatic skill, Taitu actually is a woman who is involved in every kind of political decision. So there is no any kind of political decision that Menelik made without consulting Taitu. We don't see empresses doing that in earlier periods. The fact that she was older than Menelik by 4 years also is an important thing. Her blood connection to most of the nobility also, the way she grew up, all this contributed. So politically she was not inactive like empresses of other kings and other periods. So she directly involves in every political decision, including appointments and demotions of important nobilities.
Empress Taitu instructed 10,000 to 12,000 women in the camp to fill jugs of water to reinvigorate tiring soldiers so that they can tirelessly fight to the end. Taitu is said to have led a force of 15,000 soldiers and 600 cavalry against the Italians who were attempting to conquer Ethiopia.
With her status as the empress, she has an army. When she moves, she has followers. So about 15,000 soldiers are soldiers that are directly commanded by her. So what do? During a battle they fight, like they did in the siege of Makale. They have to, with all the determination and with all the sacrifices, they have to take control of the water source, the spring. In Adwa they fought, and then during the campaign they are in charge of protecting the logistics, the food supply, whatever. So that's why she had her own army under her command, which was participating in the logistic process as well as in the actual fighting. And then when she came to Addis Ababa, that army has its own separate quarter, and it will be provided for its any kind of daily subsistence from her court, and then also some will be quartered by her. They will be given land by Taitu, not by Empress Menelik.
Taitu had been outspoken in her opposition to treaties with Italy and the Treaty of Wuchale, which effectively rendered Ethiopia an Italian protectorate on paper.
She was the one who spearheaded the idea of battling the Italians rather than the colonized. When this Italian officer tore apart the Wuchale agreement and left, the last word Nagastat Taitu uttered or spoke to this arrogant Italian officer was that, okay, let's meet at the battlefield. And so, even as she spoke, she persuaded Emperor Menelik to fight against the Italians and die rather than live and be colonized by such European powers. So then, this way, she encouraged and incited Emperor Menelik to fight.
She completely understands what the Italians were up to. You see, before the Battle of Adwa, the Italians tried to persuade most of the regional nobilities to defect Menelik and to join them. If not defecting, at least to be neutral. So she was very well aware of this, and she was working closely with most of the high nobilities of the period. Ras Makonnen, for example, Negus Takla Haymanut, Ras Mangasha, and others. So she is a very intelligent woman, and she knew what the Italians are up to, and that's why in the last negotiation with the Italians, she told blatantly the Italian negotiator that, if you think that we fear war, don't worry, we can fight you. I'm a woman, I don't like a fight, but if you are preferring a war, it's up to you, get ready, and then we will fight you. So to that extent, you see, she's a very intelligent woman, and he knew the threat of colonialism and the craftiness of the Italians.
At the siege of Mekelle, she instructed Ras Makonnen to cut off the Italian water supply so that they might disgorge from their fortress and strongly defended position at Inde Jesus Hill in the eastern region of Mekelle.
What's interesting is the Ethiopians attempted to disgorge them from that fortress twice and they didn't succeed. Because the overall army was led by Ras Makonnen, who was the father of Tafari Makonnen or Emperor Haile Selassie. But Fitaurari Gabayo was also in his company. He was victorious at Ambalage. So they didn't succeed. 2 attempts, the Ethiopians didn't succeed. Then Empress Taitu came into the picture. Empress Taitu wondered why she was trying to find a way to get them out of that fortress. So she inquired, where do they get their water? They said, oh, there are 4 springs right not far from the fortress. That's where they come and fetch water. So she said, block that water. And she ordered 2 of her gunners, Rasabata Boyalo and Dajach Balcha. These are the gunners, very powerful gunners. She ordered them to protect the water using the gunners because every time they attempt, they hit the fortress. And then they realized without water, then they cannot continue, and they surrender.
Throughout history, many women have led Ethiopia, as well as influenced and shaped the history of Ethiopia.
This is no wonder for Ethiopian women because they have been in power all throughout Ethiopian history. There was one female queen that ruled Ethiopia and the Ethiopian Empire of Arabia and Egypt, Sudan, Libya, and all that. Xiaia was her name, I think. That was 3,850 years ago. She was the direct descendant of Ethiop, the founder of Ethiopia. And this woman was ruling the old world. And she was in power, leading armies and lots of generals under her. The Queen Sheba did the same thing, the Queen of Sheba. She did the same thing. She had lots of generals under her. And so this is no big deal for Ethiopian women. There was another woman called Etege Gersamot. She was the Empress of Ethiopia. And when Augustus Caesar was the Caesar of Rome and the Caesar of the entire Roman Empire, this Ethiopian queen was in power. And the Romans invaded Ethiopian territory of the Sudan. And she went straight with her generals and then retrieved our lost territory, and she demolished all the statues, like paganic statues of Augustus Caesar and his own statue and bustes, which his subjects had worshipped because he considered himself to be a god. And so she destroyed the statues of that pagan god. And she once again restored Ethiopian freedom and territory in that region. And so there are such women who had led Ethiopia in battles and peace times. And so therefore, the role of Ethiopian women in Ethiopian civilization, or their contribution to Ethiopian civilization and freedom, most of all, is huge. It's very tremendous.
It is critical that we recognize the enormous significance of women's strength and courage, as well as the role they have played in shaping our society and understanding history. We must acknowledge the role of women during the Battle of Adwa and appreciate and honor their bravery and sacrifice.
Adwa, Adwa, Adwa.